Oh, hey, little sis. It's your big sis calling. I know that you've been asking for some advice, and I finally have some time to chat. Oh my gosh, this is a grape poppy. I don't think we've had a grape poppy on the show yet, but she's delicious. Honestly, I feel like my top three favorites are the wild berry, the cranberry fizz. I always put raspberry rose as my third, but I really like the grape poppy as well. I feel like poppy does fruit really, really, really well. But anyways, I digress. I mean, hello. First of all, can we just talk about this fit for a minute? Y'all can, some of you noticed it on my Instagram. And y'all were freaking out. You were like, are those poppy pajamas? Yes, they are. These are poppy pajamas. I got these as a Christmas gift this year. And hello, Poppy, y'all already know they don't sponsor us. They don't even know we exist. But someday we're going to get on the Poppy PR list and they will know us and they will sponsor us. So next week, unfortunately, because today was the day and I haven't been able to get out to the store yet, but Poppy just launched a new cream soda flavor. If I can find it, I will save it for the podcast next week to try it on the podcast. So I'm very excited about that. Y'all know I'm a Poppy stan. We literally drink a Poppy at the top of every single episode. I'm a big Poppy stan. They also released a bunch of merchandise this past week. And girl, you already know I'm going to have to get my hands on some of that because hello, I mean, the pajamas are already such a vibe. How could I miss out on anything else? Very excited about that. Y'all know I'm a Poppy girl. And I love it. So many of you will tell me that you're listening to the episodes and you're also drinking a Poppy right now. So if you're drinking a Poppy, you better leave me a comment or you better like tag me on your story on Instagram and be like, Kloee said it was time for Poppy. Okay. Okay. So, y'all already know before we get into doing the rest of this episode, I ultimately always do a little catch up in the beginning. So I hadn't talked to y'all about this. It was a few episodes back. For the catch up this week, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with y'all. And that is, I asked you, which Harry Potter house do you think that I'm in? I basically gave you a freebie and told you that I wasn't in Slytherin. So you knew that I wasn't a Slytherin. The amount of people in my comments that put me in Hufflepuff should be ashamed. Hello? Do you know me at all? It's like, no. Never a Hufflepuff. I have a lot of friends who are Hufflepuffs and I love my Hufflepuff friends, but I am not a Hufflepuff. The people that called me a Ravenclaw, I really appreciate that. I take that as such high praise and such a high compliment because to me, I do feel like if I could pick my own house, if I was going to choose for me, it would be between Ravenclaw and Slytherin. But I'm actually a Gryffindor. And I do feel like I have Gryffindor pride though. Like even though like on Pottermore, I literally got Gryffindor as my house. And I've taken that test a few times and it comes out Gryffindor every single time. I'm not sure what it is because when you look at the different Harry Potter houses and what they all stand for, I feel like, isn't it like Slytherin that is for like their cunningness and Gryffindor is for their bravery and Ravenclaw's their knowledge. And I can't remember what Hufflepuff's is. And I'm so sorry. It's because I don't consider myself one and I never have. But I feel like looking at those, I would put myself between a Ravenclaw and a Slytherin. Like, you know, I feel like the only reason I feel like kind of weird about Gryffindor is like, don't get me wrong. Maybe it's because the things that people deem brave are like things that actually come naturally to me. And so I'm like, that's not brave. I'm just being like, I'm just being, I just am the way that I am. I don't know how to, I don't know. So maybe that's why I can't see it as well, but I don't know. The other Gryffindors that I'm friends with always tell me like, you're obviously a Gryffindor. It's so clear. I'm a Gryffindor though. And the people that said Gryffindor, apparently you see me. So thank you. There were very, very, very few of you that guessed Gryffindor. Like I want to say I saw like 2 or 3 comments that were like, oh, I could see you as a Gryffindor. It was like, okay, so this week's episode, we are going to be doing what I am calling big sister from the internet advice. And the funny thing is, I'm not a big sister. Like in real life, I am the youngest of 7 children and I am only a little sister because I'm the youngest. So I thought this would be kind of fun because in my own life, I often feel like I'm a bigger sister sometimes. Like, I feel like I'm the one that a lot of my family members turn to for advice and for a shift in perspective. And so, even though I'm the youngest, I often feel like I as an adult am the person that younger me needed. And I think that's common of a lot of adults these days. Like most of us would be, if we were little now, we would be comfortable with the version of ourselves that we are now. So most of us in some roundabout way are older brothers, older sisters. But I'm actually in real life not an older sister. I'm only a baby sister. So I think this is kind of cute. And I actually want to do this seasonally. So every single season, this is our winter edition because we will not move into spring content for quite some time. This is our winter edition, but every single season I want to do one of these. So leave me a comment or send me a DM on Instagram if there's something in the future that you want come the springtime advice on. I would love to cover it. I'm going to come back to this comment section, especially if you're on YouTube or you're on Spotify, because Spotify and YouTube allow comments. I'm going to come back to these comment sections when we film in the spring, the next Big Sister Advice episode, and I'm going to collect from here. So make sure that you're commenting somewhere. It could be literally 2 months from now, right now, whenever it happens, I'm going to come back to these. Also, make sure that you're following me on Instagram because all of the questions that I have pulled today are all things that came from my Instagram stories. And by the time we go to film the next episode of this series in the spring, I'm going to also poll everybody on Instagram too. So make sure that you're following me. I'm at Kloee Taylor. I literally put out stuff on Instagram 6 days a week most of the time. So, and I'm always in my stories talking to y'all. It's a really great place for connecting more with me outside of just like Patreon and here, wherever you listen to your podcast. So just wanted to throw that out here that if you want to be a part of a future episode and you want advice on something specific that you just feel like I would really get it and I would see you, especially after you listen to this episode, just, drop me a line. Let me know if you want something more private because you're afraid to say it out loud. Send me a DM on Instagram. Sometimes in my DMs, you have to like request to DM. I'm pretty sure I turned that feature off. So now anybody can DM. So just shoot me a DM and I'll like screenshot it and keep it for a future episode. And I will always leave it anonymous as well. Everything we talk about today, I'm not using anybody's names and it was like all an anonymous thing that I posted. So anyways, the Big Sister advice. Now, some of these were repeat questions. Like a lot of you asked very similar questions. So what I did is I actually went through and just kind of like pulled the ones that I saw a lot of or ones that were really interesting to me. And I just kind of combined them into a single question. So the first question that I have that y'all wanted advice on is loneliness. When you have no family, friends, or a partner. And let me tell you, in the last 2 years, I was the loneliest I have ever been in my entire life. And I'm a Gemini moon. We don't get lonely easy, okay? Geminis, especially in your moon placement, you'll just talk to yourself. You don't get lonely. You're never bored and you're never lonely. But it was extremely lonely because I was very isolated. I lived out in the country, not next to anyone. I had no local friends. I do have my partner, but he also works outside of the home. And so when he would work like long hours and such, I didn't see him all day. It was just me and my cats every day. And it was extremely lonely. I was more depressed than I have been probably in my entire life. I was more lonely. And the things that actually really helped in when I was dealing with this is number one, and I think that this is something that you just have to make yourself do it. You have to make yourself do it. Even if you're afraid, do it scared, do it anxious, do the best that you can until you can do more. So the best thing that I did for myself at that time was I learned how to start dating myself. And I did it like the first time I ever did this, I stayed in my car. I didn't even get out of the car because I was too anxious and too afraid. I didn't want to be perceived. I was already dealing with a bunch of other like mental health problems. And I went and I picked myself up some local grocery store nasty ass sushi. And then I sat in my car next to the beach and I just people watched and had my sushi. And that was I'm taking myself out because I am worthy of doing this. And I wrote in my journal and I just like really made myself be with myself. My only rule was that I was not allowed to sit on my phone and scroll. I wasn't allowed to numb out with Netflix. I wasn't allowed to like basically use these coping tools that I think are actually creating a lot of isolation in today's world, if I'm honest with you. Like, we're more socially connected than ever on social media, and yet so many of us struggle with loneliness and isolation problems. And so that was my only rule for myself, was that I wasn't allowed to use these like tools that I would say they just kind of numb you out. Like, you don't realize it, and suddenly it's been 3 hours and you've doom scrolled on Instagram the whole time, or you've watched like 10 YouTube videos, which, don't get me wrong, I love YouTube. I love a podcast. I do that for a living. It'd be silly for me to say that I don't also partake. But if that's what you're doing every single day and there's no social connection, you have to start getting outside of your house. You have to start leaving the house. And as somebody that struggles with what I am calling agoraphobic like tendencies, okay, there, I don't think I'm a full blown agoraphobic, but I think post 2020, it's something that I struggle with. The only thing that is going to get you feeling better is exposure therapy. That is like, if you went to therapy tomorrow, now please remember, I'm not a therapist. This is not a diagnosis, and I'm not giving like, go to a mental health professional if that's what you're looking for. But the only thing that is known in like the therapeutic practice that helps people with this is exposure therapy, is forcing yourself to go outside even when you're a little bit scared, and just like starting with your front door, starting with the driveway and going from there. Now for me, this was just staying in my car, right? And you might not even struggle with that. You know, you might just feel lonely, but you're super okay going out of the house. But in order to stop being lonely and isolated, you have to stop being isolated. You have to go where other people exist. And so I worked on this for like an entire summer. I started just staying in my car. And then eventually, when I felt safe enough, I moved on to actually going into restaurants. I actually started in like nature first. Like, I would get out of my car and go sit on the beach. And then when that felt safe, I would go into like a local restaurant and go and dine with myself. And you'd be surprised that when you walk into a restaurant by yourself, you think it's going to be so awkward and weird. And it is. It is. The first few times you do it, it's a little weird, but you will be so surprised how many conversations get opened with you. How many people go out of their way because they're like, oh, they're there by themselves. Like, either you get people that take pity on you, which that's annoying. I hate that shit. Or you get people that are like genuinely curious about, you know, how is it whatever day of the week at this time, and this person has free time to go out and be by themselves here. And you'll start conversations that way. I talked to numerous people while I was out at restaurants. And like I said, it's difficult in the beginning. It gets easier as you continue to try. And that's like probably my number one piece of advice. When you feel like you have no one, you can't build a life of having people in it if you're not willing to put yourself in situations where people exist. You have to go where people are. And don't pick things. Probably my biggest piece of advice with this: do not pick locations that you as your best self would not want to be. So if you as your best self doesn't hang out at the bar, do not go hang out with people at the bar. Like, if you at your best self hates the movie theater, don't take yourself to the movie theater. I'm talking to myself. I did this and it was dumb. Hate the movie theater. I'm not a fan. Do things that actually feel like, hey, at my best self, this is where I would want to hang out. Like, for myself, my best self loves going to the gym. So I like meeting people at the gym because I already know, especially like, I think was it Leo Skeppy that said this? Somebody I follow said, when you want to meet people that have similar goals as you, especially like health goals, go to the gym on a Saturday morning. Those are all the people that have a regular bedtime routine. They prioritize their workouts. They prioritize their health. If those are the kind of people you want to be friends with, you need to go where the people are, is what I'm saying. So think about the things that you would enjoy and try to find things like that. Now, I would also say in this same thread, going and looking at local events. This is something I've talked about before. I have had so many flops when it comes to this, but I've had a lot of great experiences too. And it's taught me a lot about myself, interestingly enough. But go find like your local bulletin board, whether that's online, in person somewhere. When I lived closer to Port Townsend, I like lived on that side of the peninsula for a couple of years. When I lived over there, the one thing I will say about Port Townsend, which is not where I lived, but it was like a neighboring town. The one thing I will say about them is they have an intense community. Like, though the community was not for me, there were a few people that I enjoyed, but the people there have like a really intense social circle, right? And so if I would go to the local co-op, they had boards on their grocery store walls that just had event after event after event for the local town. And I would go there and see what kind of events were being hosted and then make choices from there. I would pick a few things every month and then just go. Like the first event I ever went to, I had a terrible experience, and I've still not really talked about that fully, but I will. I don't know when, I don't know what episode I want to put that in, but go to the local events. Even if you have a bad time, at least you tried. Like the first local event I went to, I had such a terrible time. I almost had a panic attack while I was out, and I left the event in tears. Like it was such a bad experience, but it taught me resiliency. It taught me that I can still keep trying. That was not the nail in the coffin for me. I wasn't like, okay, this event means I'm never leaving my safe space again and I'm never going out to try to meet people again. If anything, I'm more driven than ever to get out of my comfort zone and try again. It just took a little bit of mending my little baby squishy heart. But ultimately, if you're dealing with loneliness, I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Trust me, intimately, I know how hard it is. But you have to decide, like, choose your hard. It's, do I want to live my life in isolation? Because that's already hard. Or do I want to step outside my comfort zone and try things I've never tried before? Choose your hard. If you want change, you have to make change. You have to take steps. And I also would say one more thing on loneliness. If like you're somebody that isn't quite ready to take the leap of like fully going out and dating yourself, I will never sleep on a Discord or on like a Discord or like a Twitch chat. Okay. Twitch is not just for gamers. There are tarot card readers on Twitch. There are food creators on Twitch. Twitch is a platform that's all like live streaming content for the most part. They have some other features, but live streaming is mostly their thing. I have met so many of the friends that I have in my life today because of Twitch, because of people that I have met through live streaming and then joining their Discord communities. So I would say, like, if you want to do something from home and try to like talk to people, try out going to some live streams and like hanging out with people in chat, and then join their Discord, see what people in the chat are talking about, be a part of somebody's community. And if you feel like you really want to try that somewhere that like isn't scouting it out on your own, our community has a Discord. It's linked down below. I'm not super active on there, but a bunch of our community is. So if you want to be like a part of our community talking and stuff, we have a Discord that you can join. The next thing is how to stop giving a damn about what people think. I have the best piece of advice for you. This is going to blow your mind if you've never heard this. Okay. First of all, you're never going to stop giving a damn. That's like right out the gate. We just need to set the bar. You're never going to stop giving a damn. And the reason why is it is part of our primal nature to care. And we are never going to be able to delete that part of ourselves. There's always going to be a piece of you that cares what other people think. You cannot rid yourself of that, because at the end of the day, we are a social species, and being social is a human requirement. It is the first thing we do out the womb is cry. Like we're wanting the attention because we need it, the attention from our parent or guardian immediately from birth. We are a social species. We are trying to communicate right out of the womb. So you're always going to care. And the reason that you're always going to care is that A, we're a social species. B, this comes down to our ancestral makeup. If you didn't have a village and a tribe and like people that cared about you or cared to have you in the tribe, if you got like dicked out of the tribe, you were fucked. You were going to die. So like, you're never going to not care. So we need to get rid of this idea that we just shouldn't care. You're always going to care to some capacity. Now, that's not the mind-blowing part. I think that you can make this easier on yourself and not like people please and care so much, or, care so much that it stops you from doing things that you really want to do that you know are good for you, or like stepping out of your comfort zone kind of thing. I want you to think of a book, okay? Think of a book that you have read that was kind of mediocre, okay? It was like, it was like a 3-star. It was like middle of the road for you. You read this book and it was whatever. It wasn't a big deal. I want you to go to Amazon. I want you to go to the reviews for that book. And I want you to look at a 5-star review, and I want you to look at a 1-star review. And I want you to do this try to pick a book that has a lot of reviews. To be honest, it makes it easier to see what I'm going to tell you to do. You'll notice very, very, very quickly, if you just scan those 2 separate review sides of the 5-star and the 1-star, that the things that people hate about that book are things that people love about the same book. And this comes down to, you are never going to be able to please everyone. The things that some people love about you are the same things that people are going to absolutely hate about you. And it's not because there is something inherently wrong with you. It's that through that person's own experience, through their own makeup, through their own learning of intelligence, through their own trauma, their own trials, their own tribulations, they have gone through things that make them feel some type of way about something that you do or how you are. It could be anything. It could be the tone of your voice. It could be the way you dress. It could be how you carry yourself. It could be anything. And it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. The people that are for you, the people that you want to draw towards you, they're going to love those things about you. And those are the people that you want to connect more with. So ultimately, in order to do things and not care what people think, you have to recognize that there's always going to be people that are going to shit on your ideas, that are going to shit on your dreams, that are going to tell you you're doing it wrong, that are going to hate everything that you're doing, that are going to if you're always ready for criticism, that's because it's always a possibility. But ultimately, that's what I'm saying. It's there are going to be people that are going to love you for the same shit that people are going to hate you. And you can't please everyone. So accept the fact that you're probably always going to have some form of, oh no, this person is going to judge me and I'm afraid of that, so I don't want to do my thing. But also know that the right people are going to love you doing your thing. How to actually stick to New Year's goals. This one actually got asked a lot. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing, and this might help and it might not. We covered it a little bit in the last episode, last week's podcast, but ultimately, I think the trick to all New Year's resolutions is consistency. And I think ultimately, if you make that your goal, if you make consistency your only goal, you have no choice but to succeed, because that's all you're paying attention to is whether you are consistent or not. And it doesn't mean if you're not consistent for one day that you slash all, one tire pops, you don't go slash the other 4 on the car. You fix the one tire and you move on. But ultimately, I think that what makes people stick and what makes people not is they don't think about how consistency works. They think about how, oh my gosh, I messed up one day, well, I might as well give up. I think one of the best examples of this. Okay, let me give you an example. I love a real life example. So y'all already know from my last episode, one of my bigger goals for the year is to lose 87 pounds. Okay. I want to lose 87 pounds. I am currently 11 days in on keeping my promises to myself. I have not missed. I have not had a single day where I have been off kilter with what I'm trying to do. And I'm really proud of that, by the way, because I started on Christmas Eve. The day after Christmas. Mind you, I have had numerous New Year's where my goal has been to lose X amount of weight, or my goal has been to get into a certain shape for my body. And I flopped multiple years in a row. For more than a decade, I have flopped. Why do I think that it's going to work this time? Why do I have so much momentum behind me? Because I have already assessed the landscape of all the other times that I have quote unquote failed, which I don't even think failure is a thing. I think it's a choice. You don't have to choose to give up. It's failure is just staying down once you've fallen down. It's the choosing to get up every time you fall down that makes the difference. But I have assessed the landscape of all of the times that this has not worked for me. And one of the number one contributing factors is that I become obsessed with the scale. I become a scale monster. Okay. I will get on my scale 2 days in. I'll see that I had like a big loss. And, that happens a lot in the beginning of people trying to change their lifestyle because you lose like a bunch of water weight. Suddenly you're not eating like these super high dense calorie foods. If you've changed something, whatever it is that you're changing, a lot of times you'll lose really big in the beginning. And so you think to yourself, oh my gosh, tomorrow I'm going to get on the scale and I'm going to lose again. And it might happen a few times. You might lose like 0.1 pound or something, but eventually you're going to have a day, probably within the first week, where you get up in the morning, you get on that scale and the scale goes up. And you go, what the hell? I have done everything in my power to lose this weight. Why is the scale going up? And then suddenly you go, oh my gosh, what is even the point? Why am I even trying to do this if it's not going to work? I give up. And then you don't want to do it anymore. And you decide to throw all that momentum, all that consistency, everything out the window. In reality, this year for myself, I weigh in one time a month. So I don't allow myself to use the scale every day. I don't allow myself to get on the scale every single week even, because also if you're somebody that has a hormone cycle, your weight is going to fluctuate throughout that month anyways. And so getting on the scale every single day, because it is a known contributor to me not sticking to my New Year's goals, I'm not going to let myself do that to myself. Why would I set myself up for failure the moment that I've started? That doesn't make any sense. So I would say, like, first and foremost, if you are trying to achieve a goal that you've been trying to achieve, you need to assess the landscape of why it hasn't worked before, and you need to be honest with yourself. If you know that you have a problem with the scale, stop standing on the scale. It's not helping you. It's hindering your progress. Like, ooh, I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at myself, not you. It irritates me, but assess the landscape. And then secondarily, the next thing you're going to want to do is ask yourself when the day comes, okay? This is good advice for anything in life that you're trying to do. When the day comes that you are unmotivated, because I promise you that day will come. There is going to be a day where all your motivation is gone. You're tired, you're cranky, you don't want to keep doing all the things you've been doing. You feel some type of way, you feel a little depressy, you want to throw caution to the wind and do whatever. You need to ask yourself, while you are feeling motivated, what are you going to do when that time comes? When the time comes that your motivation depletes and you don't want to do it anymore, what are you going to do to get yourself back on track? Because when you've already planned for it to happen, because it will, inevitably it will, there is going to come a day where you're going to want to give up. There's going to come a day where you're going to want to give up. What are you going to do on that day? How are you going to get yourself to recommit? Are you going to lay in bed and cry about it? That's how I tend to deal with my problems. I'll take a day and I'll say, okay, 24 hours to cry and process. And tomorrow we get up and we rise again. That's my thing. But you have to recognize when those times come to be ready, and know that it doesn't mean it's the end. It means that, I need to let myself deal with this situation and then I'll move on. Like I said earlier, you don't have one of your car tires pop and then you decide to go slash the other 3. That doesn't make sense. Now your car's not working and you've given up. So don't do that to yourself. Fix the tire, assess the situation, and move on. There is no try and there is no fail. Literally, there is do and do not. And that's why one of my ins and outs for this year is following your plan and not your mood, because your mood's going to fluctuate all the time. Give yourself time for them feelings, but then move on with the plan. How to get started on a project when you are procrastinating. So I feel like I'm a girly with ADHD. I'm the queen of procrastination. Okay. If the dopamine is not dopamining, I don't want to do it. I'm not interested and I don't care. And that being said, the only way I can get myself to do anything when I am procrastinating is I have to gamify it. Okay. I have to gamify my whole life. And so my best tip for this is when you don't want to get started, how can you make this a game? How can you give this some kind of a system so it works to your benefit? It doesn't have to be complicated. Literally, I will tell myself, okay, if you do this thing, Kloee, at the end of this, I will take you out and we can go get I don't know, Chick-fil-A or something, like something that I would want. I try actually not to use food as a reward system anymore, but I feel like I will find something, even if it's something small, or I'll tell myself like, oh, I can't sit and lay in my bed and like color and talk to my sister until this thing gets done. And I think that ultimately really works for me. I do think you have to have some level of discipline to make that work though, because you also can just meet all of your own needs and you can be like, well, I didn't do the thing, but I'm still going to go do the reward. And you have to have the discipline to not give yourself the reward until that thing is done. That helps me personally. I have to gamify it. I also am big on lists, and I have an entire episode dedicated to getting out of your sad girl era. And it talks all about the 3 different kinds of lists that you need. I think this episode will help you tackle any project. I will link it down below for you. How to let go of friends who no longer serve you, and finding the line between wanting to help someone and letting them figure it out on their own. So I honestly think unless I have an area of expertise in something, I'm going to let every person figure it out on their own. And unless you are like my best friend or my spouse, I'm going to let you figure it out on your own every time. And you know why? Because oftentimes when you come down with all of your wise, sage energy, people don't want to hear it. They don't listen to it. It doesn't hit them the way that you think it will. You have to wait for that person to ask for sage wisdom. And this is something that I have had to learn, and I'm still not perfect at it, but I think it has saved me a lot of heartache, in the sense that I used to be the person that every time somebody said some shit that I didn't like or I didn't agree with, I felt like I had to be the one to sit there and educate them and change their perspective. And don't get me wrong, if somebody crosses my boundaries, I'm going to stand up. But I've come to a place in my life now where most of the time the wisdom that you want to pass on to someone else, they're not ready to hear it anyway. And it's why the question is so valuable. When somebody is having a hard time and they're struggling, let's say, and they're talking to you about it, all you have to say is, how can I support you right now? Do you want advice? Do you need a listening ear? Can I provide something? Let me know. And like, I always try to give options, because sometimes if you just say, how can I support you? People don't always know how they want to be supported. And when you give options, like, I think it makes it a little bit easier. But oftentimes, if somebody says they want advice, now suddenly they asked for it. And now they're ready to listen because it was their choice. But a lot of times people will just tell you they just want you to listen. And I'm not saying you need to be a dumping ground for everybody's problems. I think if somebody, and this is my Taurus energy coming out, okay? If somebody brings me the same problem a bunch of times, it depends on the person and what they're complaining about. But I do have an upper limit. And it's not like, hey, you need to do this, 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 and this, or F off. It's, hey, actually, I do not have the space right now to be a listener. I cannot listen to this right now, but I can support you in other ways. And I know, like, it takes effort to have boundaries like that. And it can be scary depending on who you're talking to and like what their level of emotional maturity is. But the right person is going to want to hear that. They're going to want to know, oh, I'm actually overstaying my welcome with this. And maybe I should, get some help or talk to somebody else about this and stop bringing it to this person over and over again. But that's what I'm saying is, like, when you give somebody the option, at least they're asking you for advice when you try to go in and like want to help or want to fix. I also think it's important to recognize that you are not supposed to fix everyone's problems. I want to say it's Mel Robbins that talks about the like let them theory, where when somebody wants something, thinks something, does something, let them. It's none of your business. Let them. That's their problem. It's not your job to save people from themselves. Now, granted, I think it's great to be a life raft for someone if you think you have the space, the mental capacity, etc. But if they did not ask, it is not your responsibility to save people. One we have is exercising with chronic pain. I only have one recommendation for this, and it's going to be the pool. I'm somebody that deals with a lot of chronic pain. I have hip and knee dysplasia. I also have what we believe is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or at the very least hypermobility. I still need to like really get checked in on that. But ultimately, I deal with a lot of chronic pain in my life, and doing water aerobics is the best thing I've ever done for myself. It is the best way I get exercise. It feels easy, and I burn like 500 calories every time I'm in the pool. So that's going to be my number one tip for people with chronic pain. That's the best I have for you. Wanting a career pivot, but nothing feels right. So if you're wanting to pivot out of your career, and the person who asked about this is somebody that's in the like gaming industry. If you're wanting to pivot out of the gaming industry, which is funny because I have done this, so I feel like I'm an expert. If you know what, let me have a little sippy. If you want to pivot out of the industry that you're in, it's really important. If you don't know, you need to let yourself start experiencing more life. So this could be watching different kinds of content, reading different books, getting outside more, going to local coffee shops, having more conversations. I'll tell you a little story about how this happened for me. So when I was in gaming, that was a different story, but my recent content pivot to being a full-time podcaster came out of the weirdest situation. And I don't know if we covered it on the podcast or not, but I went to a local meetup. I'll try to keep this brief. I went to a local meetup where everybody was coming together for like a pagan type situation. But in this local meetup, I was talking to this gentleman that was a 2-time published author. He'd also done self-publishing. And I was asking him about it because y'all know I would like to publish a book at some point. That's really important to me. And he was asking me like, well, what do you want to write about? And I was telling him my story about how I had a publishing house that was interested in me, but we couldn't agree on what the topic of the book should be. And they wanted a book on spirituality. And I did not want a book on spirituality. I didn't want to write a book on tarot or witchcraft. And ultimately, that was what they wanted. I wanted to write self-help. And that's always been true. I've always wanted to write self-help. And basically, this guy, he didn't laugh at me, but he was like, but you do tarot. That's what you do online. That's what you're known for. Like, doesn't that make sense that the company would want a book that like you could sell on your platform that would be in alignment with like your spirit, like the stuff you do? The way that this conversation blew my mind. I couldn't believe that I couldn't see past the end of my nose like that. And I was like, oh, you mean to tell me the opportunities that I want in my life, they're not in incongruency. They're not in like alignments, shall we say. They're not in alignment with what I'm currently doing. Like the big aspirations I have are not in alignment with reading tarot every single day. Why am I doing that? And I couldn't even I can't believe I missed that. I didn't think broad enough for that. And this one conversation with one person flipped my entire career upside down in one afternoon. I was like, oh. So I would say if you're wanting to pivot, ask yourself that question. What kinds of things in your career do you want to achieve? Because for me, I know that I really want to write self-help. I know that I want to publish a cookbook. I know that I want to eventually, through working through a lot of anxiety, I want to eventually speak on stage, but I don't think I'm ready for it right now. I definitely would want to I'm not ready. And I know that I'll never be 100% ready, but there's actually some serious mental health stuff I need to work through first. And I know that. So eventually though, I want to speak on stage and yeah, reading tarot every single day could get me a lot of those opportunities, but is it the way I want to do it? No. If somebody tomorrow was you're going to speak to everyone in the entire world. Here is a microphone. What would you like to talk about? I would like to teach people about self-trust. I think if we had self-trust and everybody had it, so many businesses and corporations would shut down tomorrow and we would have a totally different world. And it's the thing that I think throughout my life, I have continued to have to learn, sometimes in really difficult ways. And saying all of that, I don't need the tarot cards for that. Like, I could be writing books right now. I could be podcasting because I love to talk. Okay. Honestly, I love talking more than probably anything. My human design chart, it's my number one like gift to the world is my like ability to yap. So, podcasting is where I've always felt like it has come easy to me. And that's the thing with things that come easily to you. Leo Skepis actually said this on his podcast this week. He was talking about how, like, the things that come easily to you, the things that you can't fathom being paid for, are the things that you need to capitalize on because it should feel easy. And blew my mind once again this week. Thank you so much, Leo Skepi. If you're not listening to Aware and Aggravated, what are you doing with your life? So those are ultimately the two things. You need to A, let yourself have new experiences that are outside of the realm of what you're currently doing. And B, you need to ask yourself what you want to accomplish in your career and basically like backwards engineer it. Ask yourself what would actually get you to be doing those things. What could you start doing now that would get you there? And I find that like also just if you are not ready to backwards engineer, you just need to experience more life. You need to let yourself have more experiences. The pivot will come. And how to start a podcast. I love this. So this question I love because I would love to help other people do this. But basically, I run my podcast through Creators for Spotify, I think is what it's called. Or it's like something, it's like Spotify for creators, I think. When I started using it, it was free. I don't know if it's still free. I just get enough consistent monthly listens that I know that I'm able to monetize my podcast. I don't know if there's like a threshold now, though. They may have changed some things. It used to be called Anchor. That was who I did my podcast with before. Now Spotify bought out Anchor and now I'm under Spotify. So I run mine through Spotify. They have an entire platform that like lets you upload your podcast to all of the different places except YouTube. I have to upload my own YouTube video, but you put in like the RSS feed and it goes everywhere. But in terms of how to actually start a podcast, you don't really need a lot. Like you only need a microphone and yourself. You don't even need a camera. If you don't want to do video, you don't have to. But I do think if you want to grow, video is really important. It's why I've prioritized video at this time is like, in order to start growing my podcast, I have to start doing it this way because it's what is the future right now. How to actually start though, just get on, like it's free. Just look up Spotify for creators or creators for Spotify, something to that effect. And it will help you like step by step set the podcast up. I also start with like branding first, and I could do a whole episode talking about this, about like how to rebrand and like what that process is like, pivoting your content. I just feel like that might not be an episode for everyone, but let me know down below if that's something you're interested in. And then lastly, I had to help my content creators out, okay? This last question is content creation schedule. So I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of what mine looks like right now. Every single Sunday, I go to like respond to all my podcast comments. I put shout outs for my podcast everywhere. So like on Instagram, on YouTube, anywhere that I would post about it. I'm not perfect at this. I sometimes still miss the Discord, but at the very least I post about it on Instagram and tell people to go listen and go watch. I respond to all the comments that I've gotten. And then I will at that time, I will sit down and I will start drafting the next episode. So on Sunday, I will draft the next episode, which like I literally have the notebook right here with me. These are my notes for this episode if you're watching the video. I have a notebook that I just kind of jot down some brief notes for myself. I might make notes in my phone and I prepare for the next episode. I also at this time, if I have like Patreon content that I need to film, or I'm going to do a pick a card that week, which my pick a cards right now, I'm only doing 2 of them a month. And that's because they're both sponsored, because I feel like if I'm going to do tarot, I'm going to get paid well for it. So I only do sponsored tarot readings at this point in time. So on Sunday, if I have a week where I'm putting out a tarot video, I will also record, edit, render. I'll do all the SEO. Basically, I will do a tarot video from start to finish on Sunday if I'm doing one that week. Or if I have Patreon content to do for the month, I will do the same thing on that Sunday. Sunday is like a big day for me. And then Monday rolls around, which is actually today in my calendar. I will shoot the podcast that I made all the notes for. I will get myself ready. I will shoot the podcast. I will try to edit the podcast today and like finish it up. It's a lot to do in one day though, because it's not just filming and editing. It's also the SEO takes a while, which is like figuring out the right title, figuring out the description, figuring out all the tags, making sure that SEO stands for search engine optimization. So basically, if somebody searches for me, I want that to come up high in the search. And so doing like a bunch of research for that, making different thumbnails, because on YouTube allows you to upload 3 separate thumbnails, and then it will try, like basically in your subscription box, if you didn't know this, it will show you one. And if you scroll past the video later, it will show you another one. And this is actually a great feature. It's good for creators, even though it makes more work for me. It's good because it gives my video 3 opportunities to be clicked on. So I always make multiple thumbnails. And then that I will try to do all on a Monday. I will also, after this podcast is shot, I will sit here while I'm editing. I will take notes and I will plan 6 pieces of Instagram content. It doesn't mean I finish them today. If I can, I will, because I'm already dressed up anyways, so might as well. I do 3 carousels and 3 short form reels on Instagram every single week. And I try to theme them around the podcast every single week, but not always. Sometimes I do like astrology content. Sometimes I do tarot content. It kind of depends on how like creative I'm feeling, but I try to theme everything that week on my Instagram around the podcast. So I will take like clips from the podcast, or I'll shoot new clips. Like for some reason, a lot of people like on Instagram, this is so random, they like when you're faced at like a 45-degree angle and it looks like you're talking to someone else. And so I will like reshoot a clip for my podcast of me in this direction, and then I'll put that on Instagram, and people seem to really respond to that. So people don't like to be looked at on Instagram apparently. But yeah, I kind of have a formula with how I do my Instagram stuff. That's a topic for another time, I feel like. And then I will usually take a day off. I will take Tuesday completely off my schedule because I'm usually burnt out a little bit by that time, which I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm not saying you should burn yourself out. I just feel like I have not mastered going slow when it comes to work. I tend to like to front load my week with a ton of work, and then I am like bed rotting the rest of the week. So I work a few like 14-hour days and then I die for like 4 days. I'm not saying you should do this. I'm just saying it's currently how I'm operating. So usually by like Tuesday, I'm taking a rest day. If not, on Tuesday, I will finish everything. So I will, if I didn't finish the SEO, if I didn't finish scheduling all my Instagram content, if there's something else that needs to be like an email needs to be written, or I need to talk to like a brand about something, that is the day that I will do that stuff. And then if I put something out on Thursday, like a pick a card that week, which I would have already scheduled, I will on Thursday go and like send it to the brand that needs to see it. And I will do a little bit of promo for it on Discord on my Instagram, but then that's it. I don't work again until Sunday. So I feel like I do like 2 really big work days and then a third day of just like finishing everything. And then that's it. So I try really hard to only work 3 days a week because that's what I prefer. I would much rather have 4 days off every single week, even if that means I am working an insane day. I would rather work that way. I like to like hit it really hard and then stop. So I have not been living very cyclically lately either. I have not been prioritizing my cycle. I have just been like honestly trying to get myself into some kind of a routine. Like I said, don't think I recommend it, but that is what I'm doing right now. So that is all for big sister advice. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your questions. Please remember that if you have something you want Big Sister advice on from me, you can leave it down in the comments or you can send it to me on Instagram. I will screenshot it and keep it. I'll keep it anonymous. And I would love to have your questions in a future episode if you think there's something out there that I can answer. And thank you so much for tuning in. Please consider checking out my Patreon if you love this podcast. It supports everything I do here. So would love to have you over there. I just put out a video covering the North and South Node and the horoscopes for 2025 with that. And I'm currently working on a vlog for y'all. I just put out January's tarot and astrology report, as well as the theme for the month. Patreon's a good time and it really does support me as a creator. So I very much appreciate it. And I would also love to have you over on Instagram. I'm at Kloee Taylor. I have Blue Sky. I have Threads, also at Kloee Taylor. And basically just look at the description box, look at the show notes. There's so much stuff down there. Like my Discord's down there. My Pinterest is down there. Anything you think you might want to follow me on, I promise you it's available. And thank you so much for joining me. I love you so much. Please do not forget, when you stand on your own authenticity, you empower everyone around you to do the same. And I will talk to you in the next one. Bye.